that okay. I bet that a lot of you ran into a situation where you, as a developer, have to edit some metadata in a Salesforce organization. And as long as it is a production, there are some components that you cannot edit, only view, only execute. And I want to share you how we can overcome it in a cool way. So what's about it? An article in Salesforce Help says that we're unable to make any operations with Apex classes or triggers in unlimited and enterprise edition orgs, except executing and viewing. But there are a lot of cases where it would be useful to. Let's say you have some Apex classes on production, and some young, inexperienced developer hard-coded some date or URL or made some mistake in one of them some time ago, and now it comes up and it needs to be fixed as soon as possible because an important client's process fails. And what a day, Sandbox needs to be refreshed. It expired, and this refresh can take a lot of time. So change set is not a way. The only salvation is maybe a tool, some tool based on end, but it is also time consuming and needs to include a test run in a deploy job. So any other ideas? I have an answer. Zipex. Zipex is a free small utility that allows developers to make manipulations with the metadata, regardless of addition of Salesforce. Some of you probably have met this utility and know how it works. It contains a few Apex classes, and they can be called from any component, any part of your organization, if these classes are installed there. Well, it's not according to best practices, yeah, and I suggest you not to break the rules that are established in Salesforce. And I'm talking not about skipping the order of things. It's about situations where you want to minimize access to some things on the org, but you still want flexibility and automation for some processes, for some changing of metadata. So how does it work? In general, if you ever used Ant Migration tool or Workbench for retrieving deploying metadata to and from Salesforce org, you will like this because it's the same, but in a code. In Ant, you have to pack up your data in a folder called by the type of object that you want to deploy. Like in this case, a few classes should be in the folder classes, triggers in the folder triggers. And also you have to attach an XML file with the encountered list of items that you want to deploy. And Zipex makes it faster and automated, not like Ant. And how does it look like? Easy. Let's take, as an example, class update. First of all, we have to generate a Zipex instance in one row and pass Apex class itself in a path unpackaged classes, like here. And we have to pass its body and the contents of the class. Next, we need to pack a meta class for our Apex. It's a bit hard-coded here. We can also change API version and status of Apex through this logic. And main row here is where you pass a blob value of those files into the ZipX archive using the simple method add file. It's one of the base methods in ZipX library. First parameter in this method is file name, in this case class name, and path to this class. Second parameter is class body, that's easy. And the last one is optional. It's hex value of the CRC32 algorithm. And it's simple. I enter just null to let ZipX calculate the CRC of the file data by itself. The last step, but not the least, is adding a package XML file to our archive in the path unpackaged near the folders for classes and triggers. Here we encounter our class name. There could be multiple members, but in my example, there's only one. And what to do now? Yeah, get our ZipX archived using getZipArchive method and encode it to a string. And we're ready to deploy it. Let's make it with a SOAP callout. We generate a body in a string, pass session ID, and stringified ZipX data into the tag zip file. Next, we just make a HTTP request, and it remains just to wait. So let's go to real practice. In our company, RedTech, I was working on a solution based on ZipX utility, and let me show a small demo. First of all, we wanted to have a component with a list of Apex classes and some text area to edit them, like that. Here we simply query classes on connecting the component, and we're showing them in a list of inputs in a pick list. And we can pick any of them, let's say some empty class. By clicking on it, we can see some class contents in a text area and change anything here. After I add some, 1 second, comment here, we can click on save. And after that, current class data with edited content is passed to our controller here, and edited content is deployed to an org using this ZipX archive and HTTP request. Wait a minute. Yeah. Okay, as it works usual on demos, for some reason it fails. I don't know why. 1 second. Yeah, it was deployed, but for some reason the deploy result wasn't caught. What's interesting here is that this component contains deploy checking logic. Because after enqueuing deploy job with archive, all that we get is deployment job ID. And this job ID is being processed somewhere in the background asynchronously. But job ID is all we need. Here's a brief description of what we do after clicking save. All the data goes to Apex controller and packed into ZipX. And this ZipX data goes to some asynchronous method, let's say future in my case, which makes a request, HTTP request. And this job ID I store in a custom setting. So in this part, Apex controller returns all job ID from custom setting, and then it runs a synchronous job for deploying request. And after this request is done, a job ID from the response is saved into custom metadata. So let's say we ran a synchronous method and returned old job ID to an LWC component. After that, our component periodically checks if custom setting job ID was changed, and if it was changed, we run a check deploy job. It's a simple HTTP request as well, but it's not as simple as it looks like, because we cannot make call out directly from LWC. So I had to create name credentials based on authorization provider to run a request from the component itself. So one more thing that I want to show is a similar process, but for triggers, activating and deactivating them. Those components are just minimal draft example of what we can do with ZipX and LWC. They can be improved to, let's say, editing multiple classes, triggers, and deploying all them at once, choosing some test levels or classes. So in the trigger example, we can, in the same way, choose any trigger and activate and deactivate it. Sometimes it's really useful when some error pops up, and after the error pops up, some developer has to investigate what's the problem and try to maybe deactivate some triggers to take a look if they are the problem. And also one thing that I wanted to mention is that a class is managed from a managed package. Like here we have a package Magic Pineapple. We cannot see its contents because it's hidden from a regular eye. So that's not as good as looks like. But in the case of simple classes, it is easy to edit them. For example, as I said, we have a deploy tracking job. So if nothing fails, I hope so, when I delete this important bracket after save, it should show an error. Yeah. I'm so sorry, maybe some error occurred within name credential. Maybe it doesn't work now. I will take a look. But basically, it was working. Really, it was working today. And there was a check if deploy result is success. And if it's not, an error with line number where error occurs shows up as a message near text area. And not only Apex can be edited, I mean, any metadata can be deployed. Like fields, layouts, lightning components. And I had a project where I used ZipX as well, but my task was to automatically create and delete record triggered flows for any object. And these flows were calling a flexible invocable method in Apex that would run with any subject passed to it. So maximum flexibility for the flow, and it can be created from a custom component which is run with custom metadata type. So how did we do it? How did we create and delete flows? Basically, flow is just a meta XML file with all the steps described in it in simple text. So we passed a body of a flow hard-coded, one for everything, and just passed changed an object in this body to trigger the flow for the particular object. And we deployed it, and no test run was needed. Very simple. And we also didn't need to pass flow definitions, because when flow is being deployed, it is uploaded as a new flow definition version. And that's probably all that I wanted to tell you about. Here are some useful links, like a repository of Zipex with all needed classes, and useful links that will help to work with data that is retrieved and deployed using Zipex. And yeah, it's just a cool doggy for attracting you. So thank you for your attention. Hope you liked my small demo and maybe have some question. I'll be glad to answer them. Not all, just those that I know answer to. Thank you. Okay, chat. Oh, no answers in the chat. Oh, wait.
Yes, sorry, I was trying to get on mute. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I can ask. Sorry, I can ask a question from the audience. Is there any questions to this topic?
I have a question about the Zipex. So it's just used to make the archives with files, right?
Yeah, right. It is meant to make an archives and pass them everywhere you want. In my case, it's a HTTP request.
Ah, okay. So it doesn't do it in Salesforce in transaction. You send the data to some endpoint, and it will return you the zip file, right?
No, it's just inside of Apex class. So it's all in one object, Zipex. And after you send it, it just disappears. It isn't stored anywhere.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
API is used metadata or tooling?
I used Metadata API to deploy, and for job tracking, job result tracking, I used tooling API.
Because some of the cases, let's say for Apex classes, it's more natural than to use tooling API, because you can keep Apex to submit a class. There are a lot of examples like in the internet that you can find that it's just easy to use, and these are any packages to create an Apex class just with using tooling API without any archives. So, yeah, and also like I'm just wondering, have you thought about native Salesforce things like metadata namespace, where is deploy container, for instance, or deploying metadata and other layouts and other things, which is provided natively by Salesforce?
Sir, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so okay, I'll just summarize it. Can you also look at the different options like tooling API or metadata namespace, which Salesforce provide you native?
Well, actually, yes, it was just a demo of using especially Zipex, because I used mostly it for deploying other types, not only Apex classes. As I said, it's custom fields with formulas, and also it was LWC editing, and like I said, the flows to work with. So, but I think I don't know how to answer about tooling API. I haven't worked with it properly in a way you said, so I will take a look, investigate if it can be used.
For Apex classes, it's pretty easy, and you don't need like archiving, you just provide the text data. So it's, in this case, it's easier, but it won't support, as you mentioned, all of the metadata types. So you can create like something else with the
Mhm.
So for APIX classes, it's looks for me easier to utilize it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the most challenging and what was the best? And one that you can, what you're looking at, your wide.
Sorry, I heard you bad.
Yeah, I can repeat. So the question was, what is the most challenging in work with Zipex and what you can recommend to avoid, what you can recommend to avoid?
When I was working with flows and deploying with Zipex, the most challenging task was to delete flows. I come up with a thought that it's not really easy because first you have to delete all the posts and failed interviews, then deactivate all the versions, then deploy destructive changes to delete all the flow versions, and querying them is not an easy thing. So I would say that my advice is just to know how all the metadata works, because I wasn't knowledgeable enough to work with it and estimate all the processes. So yeah, I would say that it's easy to work with Zipex if you just know how everything is stored in Salesforce and how to work with metadata that you would like to change with Zipex. Something like that.
Yeah, go ahead.
One question, is it possible using Zipex, for example, archive or make a zip of files like attachments to the case and give a user ability to download the zips?
To upload attachments, I think that it's possible, yeah, but I think it's easier to do it using just a subject in Salesforce, and I think that content versions and attachments are available for insert in a simple DML operations, if I understood correctly. So you don't need to use the Zipex in this case, but I think that it's quite possible. Yeah, just if it's content versions, I think that would be not an easy thing to deploy.
No, it's not deploying, it's about downloading. So
Oh,
business, when you have a case with 100 of attachments and you want to collect all those attachment files in one zip and give a agent ability to download them.
That's an interesting question. I think that's possible. Everything is possible, but yeah, need to take a look at it. Just need to try. But yeah, the limit of zip, I don't know if you don't hit a limit if there are hundreds of attachments. Maybe you have to retrieve them as batches, maybe in separated parts.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Can we deploy APIX plus the production and APIX without tests?
Without, sorry, the last.
So the question was, can we deploy Apex class to production without running a test? Yeah.
Yeah, of course, like I did. There's in the body of request, there is a tag test level or something like that, and you just pass no test run, and no tests are needed. It's not good advice to do like that.
Will it fall in production?
Sorry.
The question is, will it fall in production?
Nope. Nope. I don't think so, because if you use no test run, it will just update in a production, and it will fail the next time when tests are run. If you make it as a failure.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, there is no questions from the audience here. That is offline. Maybe some questions from the people that are offline. No. Okay, cool. Then thank you, Max.
Thank you, everybody. Questions?
It's good. 1 second. Let's check. Okay, so thanks to all of the people who were with us online today. There are plenty of people here that is offline here. Thanks for joining. And Oleg, are you here? Oh, okay, Oleg is not here. So yeah, thanks for joining our meetup. We will keep you posted in the social medias with updates from today's. And thanks for your time, and looking forward to work with you, maybe to meet some of you on site in different countries, and see you guys. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.